Happy Combat Sports Fight Week, or as better known as Happy Mexican Independence Day Week. My name is Zain Bando. This is Bando, whose breakdowns another edition. Good to be back here. It was definitely a solid week in the world of sports, in the world of college football, and in the world of NFL. So I'm excited to get into it. And this is Bando, whose breakdowns. Happy to be back here again with another action-packed show this week. For those of you who don't know much about of this show by now, this is my solo show to go along with my main flagship show. That's the MMA Outsiders. We just recorded episode 98 the other day, so that was a lot of fun. We covered a lot of fights. We covered UFC 306. We covered Canelo versus Berlanga. We also covered some news and notes items. It was a very, very solid show, so be sure to check that out wherever you get your podcasts. And speaking of, you can listen to Bando's breakdowns wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Premium, and so much more. Would greatly appreciate it. Would greatly appreciate also if you subscribe to the Empty the Bench Podcast Network, youtube.com/ETB Network. We just hit the 875 subscriber mark. So if you guys can take this episode, share the episode, follow the network, social media at ETB Network, and of course at Bando's Breakdown across social media. It's scrolling across the bottom there. This is episode 21. It's crazy to think about considering how early on the show is. So again, go to youtube.com/ETB Network. And again, if you're watching on the video platform, go over to the audio only platform and vice versa. Also, I need to take a moment to remind you guys that Bando's Breakdowns is presented by Playback. Playback really did come through. They now have nationally televised NFL games for Sunday night and Monday Night Football. So for those of you who have not checked out those streams of the Jets and the 49ers, as well as the Lions and the Rams for Sunday, we're going to keep doing more coverage of those. I will be on with Grant Winsauer, who does the short form video Grant's Game Day that you see across the ETV Network socials. He and I will be live reacting to Bears Texans Week 2. That is CJ Stroud versus Caleb Williams, which should be extremely exciting. And to add to that, stay tuned for more Playback coverage on the way. We'll also have Fight Study coming out later this week to preview UFC 306. We're going to watch some fights of Sean O'Malley. We're going to watch a couple fights of Marab. And then, of course, we're going to dive into the two fights between Alexa Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko that have took place over the last year or so. So stay tuned for all of the exciting Playback stuff coming up. And speaking of Playback, presented by Playback, watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Hence, the two streams that just took place that I mentioned. That's literally the experience. You can watch the game, interact with the creators, add comments, and even come up on stage to give your own thoughts and analysis as well. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. And again, you can go to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, and it only takes about 30 seconds to join the community. So stay tuned for more Playback content on the way. Moving into the context of the show, though, again, as I just alluded to, episode 21, a lot of exciting stuff coming up in the show. It's going to be a very football and combat sports heavy episode of this week. I gotta milk these two sports as much as I can, especially in a week like this week. So we're gonna go over NFL Week 1, which I did very, very well on predictions wise. We're gonna go over how I did. We're gonna go over who won and who lost. We're gonna go over how well I'm doing in Survivor. We're gonna go over the biggest surprises and biggest disappointments of the week, and we're also gonna go into the madness that was college football, all of the major top 25 upsets that took place in Week 2, including one that involved my alma mater Saturday night. We're going to go into that. We're also going to get into a Week 3 preview, give some of my picks and predictions of some of the games that are going to be taking place in college football later on this weekend. You're going to get more analysis on the next episode of Forever Power 5 that comes out. later this week. So those of you who have liked that show so far, that show is going to continue on within the episode, as that show is still in its infancy. And then we're going to end by previewing UFC 306 Canelo versus Berlanga, what I think is the better value, and a couple other odds and ends there. But let's get right into it. We're going to start off with Zain's overview. Zain's overview is packed this week in a very heavy college football week. And we're going to start with what took place Saturday night in Champaign. Once I watched this game, I knew I had to lead with it. Illinois is 2-0 for the first time in the Brett Bielema era, the first time since 2019, as they knocked off number 19 Kansas and Jalen Daniels, exacting revenge from last year's 34-23 loss in Lawrence, Kansas. And I got to say, this game was awesome. Luke Altmaier, mistake-free day again, did not throw a touchdown, but was respectable. 16 of 25 for 192 yards. And then, of course, the Scott roommates did their thing. Xavier Scott had a huge pick six right before halftime to put Illinois ahead. And then, of course, Illinois' running game also dictated the pace as well. This game was phenomenal from the jump. There was so much hype around this game. It was the first sellout for U of I at Memorial Stadium since 2016. It was the first win against a ranked non-conference opponent at home since 2011, all the way back when they beat Arizona State, when Arizona State was a legitimate football program. They really have not been the same since. But for this Illinois team, this is an important win, and you have to remember, I'm a alum class of 2022. So in my 40 years of going to school there, we did not have a lot of great football moments. We had the game-winning field goal against Wisconsin in 2019, the Kansas Miracle game. Everyone remembers that. Wisconsin was a top 5 team in the country, and Illinois was able to win that. We had the marathon game. I think it was 9 overtimes against Penn State, in-state college. Illinois will be rematching Penn State in-state college in a couple of weeks. That was Brett Bielema's biggest win until this one. And, I just think, Illinois is starting to play together. They have a lot of guys that, a lot of people don't really know on a national level. I think Luke Altmaier has gotten some attention that, maybe he hasn't gotten yet as a college quarterback. I think he's played extremely well the first 2 weeks. I think Caden Fagan and Aiden Lawfrey are playing really well in the backfield. I think they're starting to find their chemistry. I think that Pat Bryant has made some strides at wide receiver, and I think the defense, while relatively young, is learning to produce takeaways. Ever since Brett Bielema has been the coach, this has been a very defensive heavy, run the ball type of program. And to see what they've been able to do the first 2 weeks and to shut down a dynamic offense that has a boatload of talent led by Daniels, someone who a lot of college football pundits think is one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12. And for the most part, Illinois was able to shut him down, especially in that final drive, forcing the strip sack fumble to seal the game was just magical. So I obviously wasn't in attendance, but this is a game that made me break down a little bit, just knowing that in my years of school there, Illinois football has not been good. When I started there, I was a part of the end of the Lovey regime. My first 2 years, he was fired post COVID, the 2-6 year in 2020, and then Brett's come in and done his thing. His best start since Lou Tepper about 3 decades ago. So that's cool. And what I think is even cooler too is, when you look at Illinois' schedule holistically, I mean, they started the season, beating an Eastern Illinois team that was an FCS contender that had a pretty solid quarterback in Pierce Holly. They were able to shut him down. That's a team that went 8-3 a year ago. Some people thought maybe the game would be closer, than what the score indicated, but that obviously didn't happen. That was a blowout win, and I saw very few experts pick Illinois to beat Kansas. I was one of them that said that Kansas would win a close game, and I'm more than happy to admit that I was wrong. I just simply didn't think that Illinois could do it. I was very glad to be wrong about that. And then you look, and obviously I'm going to get to this in a little bit, but then you get into the weeds of their schedule. They get Central Michigan, and then they finally go into Big Ten play. They're playing the likes of number 23 Nebraska, and they're playing Penn State, and they're playing Oregon, and they're playing these teams to where you can get a couple more signature wins like this one, the one that took place on Saturday. Not only are you going to impact recruiting, not only are you going to, you know, recognize to the college football world that you're a legitimate contender to win 8, 9 games every year, but you're going to feel a sense of stability that Illinois has not felt in quite some time. The last time they had back to back winning seasons was 2010, 2011. So this is a program that's still building. I understand they're 2-0. I understand that everyone's excited, but it's got to be a one game at a time approach. It continues with Central Michigan this week. I'll get more into the game in a little bit, but just to know that Illinois' comfortability starting 2-0 and beating a ranked team and potentially being one win away from being ranked themselves in the top 25 is very fitting, and it just goes to show me that people need to start believing in this program, because when Brett Bielema started here, there were the critics, there were the people who said, "Oh, why did he leave Wisconsin? It didn't work out at Arkansas." But to see what he's been able to do in Champaign so far, taking us to one bowl and having an 8-win season so far, I think is only the sign of things to come. We're going to quickly move on from that. We're going to shift from college football to the NFL. We had Caleb Williams' first game as a pro, first regular season game, did not play extremely well, but the Bears overcome a 17-0 deficit to score 24 unanswered points, have the defense come out and essentially dominate the Titans in the second half. This is a good win. I mean, this is an inspiring win for the Bears team that's still relatively young. This is a win that the Bears needed to get, because Tennessee, is just simply not a very good football team. And the Bears played down in the first half, but that pick six really changed the entire complexion of the game there. And the Bears being able to get a stop late in the fourth quarter to seal it was awesome to see. And I think, again, it's only a sign of things to come. Did the Bears play down to their competition? Yeah, but did they show that they can win the game in the trenches? Absolutely. And I think if the defense is going to carry them the whole season, I don't really care. I mean, I'm one of those Bears fans where I think a win is a win. Caleb Williams is still a rookie. He's still developing. Unfortunately, he's going to lose one of his top targets in Roma Dunse for a little bit. But I think it goes to show that every week is going to be a learning experience. And even if he plays average at best, I think the Bears will be okay and will be competitive in a lot of these games, including the game against Houston, which I'll get to in a little bit. But overall, very, very happy with how the Bears played. Um, I feel I feel like it was an emotional win of sorts, just because everybody had been excited for this game, but to see the Bears win the first game of the season and go into a national TV spotlight atmosphere type against a Houston team that a lot of people were picking to potentially go to the AFC Championship and maybe even the Super Bowl in some respects, is definitely going to be a challenge for a team that's still building and still learning how to win games. All right, we're going to move back over to college football. We're going to talk about my other alma mater. We got Duke taking on Northwestern, and unfortunately, Northwestern's fumble recovery late in the fourth quarter was not enough. Northwestern loses in overtime. I think it was in double overtime officially. Final score there was 26-20. And again, this is not what you want to see from a Northwestern team that was supposed to win the first two games of the season. I mean, you come in against a Duke team that's led by Manny Diaz, who's had a lot of experience, and you come in with the Duke team that isn't particularly that good and play down your competition. I mean, what else really do you expect to happen? Obviously, in my opinion, the refs got the call wrong at the end of regulation. But the fact of the matter is Northwestern shouldn't have been in that position to begin with. They had several drives stall early in the game, which was disappointing. And they also had, just a lot of things go wrong, just miscues, way too many penalties. just boneheaded mistakes, and then obviously letting Duke get the ball back late was disappointing, and then obviously blowing a pretty comfortable lead was also part of it too. And then to make matters worse, Mike Wright not even playing that well and getting benched. We're going to get into that in a little bit. But him getting benched obviously doesn't help. So not a good start for David Braun and company after a emotional win against Miami of Ohio in the first game of the season. So far in the new Martin Stadium, Northwestern is 500, and thankfully they have a bit of an easier opponent coming into Evanston this week. So maybe they can get a win before starting a Big Ten play at Washington the following week. But that's either here nor there. That was kind of disappointing too. All right. We're now going to move into a new week in college football. It's week 3, and we're going to move back over to the Illinois side of things. They will be hosting homecoming against the Central Michigan Chippewas out of the Mid-American Conference. Central Michigan coming into this game at 1-1. Illinois, as I just alluded to, at 2-0. This is going to be outstanding. I mean, this is going to be another raucous atmosphere at Memorial Stadium. As I just alluded to in the last segment, over 60,000 people showed up to the Kansas game. It was the first sellout in 8 years. So hopefully this momentum can continue into the Central Michigan game. Just taking a look, though, at some news and notes regarding this game, sort of as I did last week. It was super helpful to take a look at and just to kind of encapsulate, if you will, everything that's currently going on with the program. So, by the way, Xavier Scott, who I told you with three turnovers, including that interception, was named Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week. So, congrats to him. All right, so we got Illinois taking on Central Michigan. Some stakes of the game. It's this Saturday, 11 a.m. is the kickoff. And let's take a look here. So, according to a press release from Fighting Illini Athletics, we've got Illinois closes out its season opening 3-game homestand on Saturday at 11 a.m. The Fighting Illini hosts Central Michigan at Memorial Stadium for their homecoming contest. Then it gets into some info regarding the Kansas game, which we already went over, but here are some news and notes on Central Michigan. So, Central Michigan is 1-1, and they got blown out by Florida International last week, 52-16. Not good. Not good. That's not what you want to see at all, especially a team like Florida International that isn't really known for their football all that well. Let's move on, though. The Chippewas opened their season on August 29th with a 66-10 home victory over Central Connecticut State, a performance that saw CMU score 9 total touchdowns. Despite its most recent defeat, Central Michigan ranks second in the MAC in total scoring with 82 points, leads the conference in fewest passing yards allowed, 107.5. I think beating Luke Altmaier in that category is going to be easier said than done. And then and is one of 3 FBS teams that has returned both a kickoff and a punt for a touchdown. Chippewas are still led by Jim McElwain, and he's guided them to 2 bowl games and 1 trip to the MAC championship. This is the first time these 2 programs will be facing off against one another. This is the second straight year that Illinois will be hosting a MAC school. They hosted Toledo last year in week 1 and got the job done in that one. All right, and unfortunately, this game is going to be on Peacock. Boo-hoo to those of you who are not fans of streaming, but yes, that's the only way you'll be able to see it. Not to plug Peacock too much, but it's only $8 a month. So in theory, if you are a diehard Illinois fan and you are not going to be able to make it, you can spend the $8 and cancel it right when the game is over. So that's a little update on Illinois versus Central Michigan. The early line for this game that I've seen is that Illinois is a sizable favorite. Let's take a look at what the updated betting line is for this game as well. Let's see here. So, all right, this is according to Doc Sports, which is a pretty reputable source when it comes to betting. The current spread on this game is Illinois by 3 touchdowns, and the over-under is 52.5. Given that Central Michigan could only score 16 points against FIU, I like that spread. So if I was a bettor, that was not in the state of Illinois, and I had a chance to bet this game. I would tell people to bet Illinois to cover the 3 touchdown spread. I think this should be a relatively easy one. I mean, I don't think Central Michigan has the talent to stack up to Illinois, much less even remain competitive. So I think Illinois easily gets the job done. I think they go. I think they start 3-0. I think they win comfortably. Give me a 38-17 final. They just barely cover the number there, and Brett Bielema starts 3-0 for the first time in his tenure as Illinois head coach, and they move into Big Ten play with all the momentum with a number 23 Nebraska squad on the way in Lincoln on my birthday a week from this Friday. So give me Illinois there. The dream start to the season continues. The one of the biggest shocks of the nation. So I think Illinois gets it done and sends Central Michigan home at 1-2 and with a lot of question marks. So give me Illinois to get the job done and get a comfortable win in there. I like the way that game is going to play out. All right, as I just alluded to over in Evanston, Northwestern gets an easier opponent this coming week. They get Eastern Illinois. It's their second trip to, I guess, suburban/Chicago, Illinois in a 3-week span as they did play Illinois in the first game of the season, which I was in attendance for. This Eastern Illinois team is not good. Simply put, I don't care who Northwestern's quarterback is, whether it's Jack Lausch, whether it's Mike Wright. Northwestern should have no trouble winning this game. Give me Cam Porter to have like 170 yards rushing on the ground, a potential career day. He might score a couple times. Lausch might pass for a touchdown. Northwestern can win by however much they want, and I think they'll be fine. They could even play bad for a quarter, and I think and I think they could still win this game. That's how bad Eastern Illinois is. This should be a win for Northwestern, starting out the season 2-1, going into a very difficult Big Ten schedule. We're only going to get one more game at the Lakefront Stadium against Indiana October 5th before your Wrigley Field schedule takes over. They're basically on the road for much of the remainder of the season after the Indiana game until the Wrigley game. So to keep the home field advantage at stake would be very important. Let's take a look at some news and notes on Northwestern versus Eastern Illinois, very similarly to how I just did for Illinois. And this is going to be a theme of this. This is going to be a theme in this show. I'm kind of going to go over the game notes that I've been given, and then we're going to make a pick. I just think it makes it easier in a regard, just that way we know that we're getting our information 100% right. By the way, David Brunn did speak to the media. On Monday, and had a lot of interesting things to say, including that announcement regarding Lausch being the starting quarterback. So let's take a look at some news and notes for Northwestern, just what to expect. By the way, Cam Porter did rush for 93 yards in that game as well, which actually is decent, but not up to usual standards. All right. It's going to be a 6:30 p.m. kickoff on Big Ten Network, a part of a huge day on Big Ten Network. A lot of football to be played in the Big Ten Conference. We're going to go over all the games, what other games to expect in just a second. But that's a batch of Big Ten football to be aware of, as well as the fact that this is Northwestern's final non-conference game. Usually in the SEC, you'll see schools that will get a non-conference game in November, like Alabama always plays Mercer, for example. That's one that comes to mind. Let's take a look here at Eastern Illinois. So, sitting at 1-2. As I just do, or excuse me, not 1-2. I think they've lost their first 2 games. Let's take a look. Actually, no. So according to a press release, Eastern Illinois, they're 1-1. So they're in. They got votes in the FCS top 25. Let's take a look here. EIU is coming off a 27-20 win over Indiana State in the Panthers home opener. improving the team to 1-1. EIU faces its second Big Ten opponent this season with the 6:30 p.m. kick Saturday night at Northwestern. So they've gotten some votes, which is a good thing. So that might give them some confidence. Let's take a look at how Eastern Illinois did in this home opener. So as I alluded to, they beat Indiana State. Indiana State fell to 0-2 with that loss, and the defense, very similarly to the Bears, I guess you could say, kind of carried the team. So we've got let's see here. So Nick Coates forced a fumble, then Moses Alexander scooped it up and raced 60 yards for an early second quarter touchdown as Eastern Illinois' defense forced 4 turnovers in a 27-20 win over Indiana State. Saturday night's opener, they played pretty well. I just think that the level of competition when you compare a team like Indiana State versus a team like Northwestern, I just don't think you can. So I'm going to pick Northwestern here. I'm going to say they win 38-3. I think this is a domination. I think EIU is a good FCS program, but I really do think that that's about all they really have going for them. Let's take a look now, though, at the Big Ten upcoming schedule for this week. We have a lot of different games going on in the football realm. It's going to be exciting. Let's take a look at some of the major headlines, some of the major games we have coming up. We've got let's see here. Let's take a look. We've got a bunch of different we've got a bunch of different slates that we should take a look at here. So here we go. Okay, so in taking a look at the Big Ten schedule for this coming week, let's take a look at some of the games. Big noon kickoff, we've got Alabama versus Wisconsin. Huge game for the Crimson Tide, obviously, looking to still remain, on course for that colossal matchup with Georgia. You got Michigan versus Arkansas State. Michigan looking to bounce back after a devastating, demoralizing loss to Texas at home. That was their first loss in 16 games. Illinois versus Central Michigan, which we previewed. Michigan State, who all of a sudden is 2-0, got an upset win in College Park against Maryland. Washington versus Washington State. That is at 2:30. I'm pretty sure that's also a Peacock game. Oregon versus Oregon State. Notre Dame, who dropped all the way to number 18 in the recent AP poll, is going to be playing against Purdue. So that'll be interesting because Notre Dame just got upset by Northern Illinois. We're going to talk about what that loss means for the Fighting Irish later on in my Zinger segment. We got Iowa looking to bounce back after a devastating loss to Iowa State. We've got Indiana taking on UCLA. Seen a lot of Twitter pundits say that Indiana's got a shot to win that one. We got Eastern Illinois against Northwestern, obviously. Nebraska looking to start 3-0 under Matt Rule this season, taking on Northern Iowa, and Virginia versus Maryland to close out the Big Ten slate. Overall, a good slate. Obviously, the big headlining game is Alabama versus Wisconsin, of course. That's big noon in Madison. I know a lot of people that are excited for that game. That's a tough ticket to get. So to anyone who's going, have a wonderful time. Then, of course, we've got some non-conference action. And nice to see Purdue and Notre Dame renew their rivalry. That should be a very good game. Overall, a solid Big Ten slate. Looking forward to all of it. Can't believe we're mid-September already when it comes to college football, but it should be a blast. Games will begin at noon Eastern and will go all the way until about starting at 7:30 Eastern will be the final game. No late nightcap games like a week ago with Oregon or anything like that. So not going to be a super late night for the Big Ten fans on the in the Central Time Zone or on the East Coast. So thankfully, no need to stay up till over midnight to watch Oregon or USC or anything like that, at least this week. So it's something to keep in mind there. All right, we're going to move on. We're going to go back over to the NFL now. Bears and the Texans, huge game. Sunday Night Football, first major test for Caleb Williams, taking on a Texans team that barely squeaked by the Colts last week. I like Houston. Simply put, I think the home field advantage is too pertinent to overlook. I still think Caleb Williams is a young quarterback. CJ Stroud has been on bigger stages before. I think Houston has more talent around them. I think they win by a touchdown. I think it's a game that the Bears lead at one point midway through the second quarter, maybe early third quarter, but they lose the lead late and they drop their first game of the season. Give me a 35-28 final score here. No, I know it's a little bit higher scoring for a national TV game, but with the epicness of last Sunday night's game between Detroit and the Rams, I can kind of see a theme here that some of the national TV games are going to be a blast. So I think that the Bears play well. They play well enough to win, but I think they just make too many mistakes late in the game to drop this one, fall to 1-1 on the season, and quite frankly, too, 1-1 against the AFC South, considering that their first three opponents are all against AFC South teams before they host the LA Rams at the end of the month at Soldier Field. So that should be exciting as well. We're finally going to move into the fights, though. We've got Canelo Alvarez taking on Edgar Berlanga at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. This should be interesting because Edgar Berlanga is not the first choice that fight fans would have loved for Canelo to fight. Everybody wants to invite David Benavidez, Canelo's guys, and Turkey Al Sheikh's guys. Can't get a deal done for that one. So in steps Edgar Berlanga. And let's take a look at some news and notes on that fight, courtesy of Premier Boxing Champions, because I think this is a fight that's relatively being slept on a little bit. So let's take a look here. So when you look at Canelo, which by the way, this Canelo fight is very expensive. They're charging $90 for this. And by the way, at the time that we're recording this is the day that Canelo and Berlanga are going to do their grand arrivals, which should be exciting. So let's take a look here. This is according to a press release sent on July 25th by Premier Boxing Champions. So shout out to them. Let's take a look at some news and notes here. So, this showdown will deliver the latest chapter in the long boxing rivalry between Mexico and Puerto Rico, with the fighting pride in Mexico and Canelo Alvarez dueling Puerto Rico's Edgar Berlanga, highlighted by numerous historic matchups, including Salvador Sanchez versus Wilfredo Gomez and Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. versus Hector Camacho. Canelo is no stranger to this heated rivalry, having defeated Puerto Rican Hall of Famer Miguel Cotto in one of the biggest Mexico versus Puerto Rico fights in recent memory. Just some more news and notes on where to see the fight. Just so you guys know, it's an Amazon Prime production. It is a DAZN production, and it is also ppv.com. ppv.com does not require a subscription if you want to save a little bit of money. So let's take a look here in regards to some of the quotes. So we've got, let's take a look. So here is some info on Canelo. So having captured world titles at 154, 160, 168, and 175 pounds, Canelo, currently sitting at a record of 61, 2-2 with 39 KOs, steps back into the ring after dropping countryman Jaime Munguia in May on his way to a unanimous decision win. The fighting pride of Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico, Canelo became undisputed at super middleweight in November 2021 by taking the IBF belt from the unbeaten Caleb Plant via an 11th round TKO, eventually going on to successfully defend all four titles 4 times after dropping a light heavyweight title fight against Dimitri Bivol in May 2022. Canelo rebounded to defeat Gennady Golovkin in their September 2022 trilogy fight before besting John Ryder and Jermell Charlo in 2023. And of course, just recently in May, he did knock off Jaime Munguia in a very one-sided affair there. Taking a look at the quote from Canelo, I'm very excited for this fight between Mexico and Puerto Rico. It's exciting to be a part of another great Mexico versus Puerto Rico battle inside the ring, because historically we have always offered unforgettable fights full of passion. I am proud to contribute to this legacy, and facing an opponent like Edgar Berlanga adds to even more excitement and meaning to the event, which I agree with. And Berlanga essentially said, "This is the opportunity of a lifetime. I deserve to be here. I'm going to shock the world and silence the critics by delivering a masterful performance and knocking out Canelo Alvarez on September 14th. Easier said than done there, my friend. I will prove that my Puerto Rican heritage surpassed Mexican boxing, from Gomez to Trinidad to Cotto. And now to Berlanga. I will reclaim what is rightfully ours. I'm ready to make this a historic fighter fight, continuing the great rivalry in boxing, Puerto Rico versus Mexico. I'm going to stick with my same prediction I gave on the recent episode of the MMA Outsiders. I think Canelo beats him. I think he knocks him out probably in round 9 or wins a decision. I think this is an easy win for Canelo. I think it's too much to ask of Gregor Berlanga coming into this fight, not really, the general public not really knowing who you are to try to shock the world. I just don't think it's possible. I don't think Canelo's slowing down. I think any critics that are saying that he is are soundly mistaken, and I think he goes in and he dominates Edgar Berlanga at T-Mobile, getting a comfortable win this Saturday night, redefining his place as the best boxer pound for pound on the planet. Will give me Canelo. Moving over just down the street at the Sphere UFC 306, Riyadh season, Noche UFC. We know the stakes here are going to be the most unique UFC event of all time. The first event in 1080p HD quality. The event is headlined by Sean O'Malley versus Merab Dvalishvili and Alexa Grasso versus Valentina Shevchenko. Just going over some news and notes regarding not just UFC 306, but myself. So going into this event, I'm 202, 163, and 4 on UFC events. So not bad there in terms of percentage. Unfortunately, though, my UFC main event record is not very good. My UFC main event record is 500. My UFC pay-per-view record is 5-3 in main event championship fights. I'm picking Sean O'Malley for this one. I just think the hype is too big. It's the Sphere. The UFC knows he's the money draw. And I think Merab made a mistake by posting his cut a couple weeks ago. And who knows if A, that cut is fully healed, and B, whether or not Merab is too overconfident and maybe thinks that, O'Malley's going to be an easy fight. O'Malley certainly thinks he can beat him. The question is can Merab back up all the trash talk that he's been saying where he thinks that O'Malley's going to be an easy fight? That's going to be the most unique part of this whole thing. And then in the co-main event, I love Valentina Shevchenko here. She's, in my opinion, the best flyweight in the world. Alexa Grasso is great, but I think Shevchenko's resume is too much. I think her striking is a lot better. And I think if she doesn't get complacent, I think she can win this fight either by late 4th round TKO or by decision. Should be a phenomenal fight as well. 10-fight card overall. No traditional early prelims. The first fight, I'm pretty sure, begins at 7:30 Eastern. If I'm not mistaken, let me just double check that as I have it down. Let's have it down here. UFC 306 gets underway with the preliminary card. Yeah, beginning at 6:30 Eastern on ESPN Plus. A lot of Mexican flair there. The main card looks like this: Rodriguez versus Osborne, Zellhuber versus Ribovics, Ortega versus Lopez. That's the fight that was supposed to happen in June. Brian Ortega fell ill because of the weight cut. Dan Ige stepped in last minute. Diego Lopez won that fight. Now they're rebooking that fight again, so we'll see who wins that one. Then the 2 title fights, you can pick that up. ESPN Plus pay-per-view. The deadline to get the $10 discount has already passed. But if you want that fight, get that fight now because the streams are going to be through the roof and everyone's going to try to see that one. So if you're interested in watching the fight, set your calendar plans now because it's going to be a spectacle to behold. A lot of interesting Sphere elements that the UFC has now started to put out publicly, but still we won't really know fully what's going to happen until the night of the event. From a production standpoint, I'm very, very excited to see how this whole thing plays out. It should be an absolute blast. We're going to move over, though, to Zain Zinger, and I have a couple of zingers to go over just briefly. I don't think Nebraska should be ranked number 1. They just took down Colorado and Deion Sanders. That's a whole drama show in Boulder. I think beating a Colorado team that went that was brutal last year, went 4-8, has a lot of baggage, a lot of turmoil. With the whole Travis Hunter situation and Deion Sanders not really wanting to talk to the media. This to me does not warrant a ranked win. I think what warrants a ranked win is, an Illinois win against a ranked Kansas team. I think is way more deserving. But we'll see. Nebraska gets an easy game this week and then they play Illinois. So maybe this will come back to bite me, but I don't think beating Colorado whatsoever warrants a ranking. This is a Colorado team that's still in rebuild mode here. Uh, Again, just as I alluded to, a lot of turmoil, a lot of baggage. This is a game that Nebraska, a lot of you thought they were going to win, and they won comfortably. I think they took care of business, and to me, they shouldn't be overly rewarded. I think that AP top 25 poll and who's ever on the poll needs to reevaluate, because if Illinois can be ranked number 24 by the local Champaign beat reporter Bob Asmussen, then I think, just from a little bit of a biased perspective, if Illinois can be ranked 24, I don't think Nebraska has proven to me, based on who they played so far, that they deserve to be ranked. Had they beat a top 5 team or a top 10 team, a totally different story. But to beat the circus that's Colorado, come on, guys, that was supposed to happen. Nebraska needs to earn their ranking, and I feel like they were just simply gifted it. Moving right along, Northern Illinois, massive upset over Notre Dame over the weekend, and I think that this is brutal. I mean, I think if you're a Notre Dame fan, I would not be excited about this. I mean, this is, to me, one of the worst losses in program history, the biggest win in the history of Northern Illinois Husky football. Um, I don't know. I don't really know how to feel about this, other than the fact that I think Northern Illinois deserved to win this game. Notre Dame played down to their competition, and with the way Notre Dame played against Texas A&M, I mean, this is a backward step, if you will, and I think Marcus Freeman's attitude of him not being overly disappointed in his team, I think, is just very weird, especially in the way that and someone pointed this out, a Notre Dame alumnus who played for the program, I think it was 20 to 30 years ago, pointed out, before the game, his lack of a response to what he expected from Riley Leonard, of him not trying to do too much. Then my question is, what is the kid supposed to do? 2 years ago, he was the man at Duke. Last year, he was injured. What do you want the kid to do? What does he go out and do? They play this conservative game plan where the game was super close the entire time, and they give Northern Illinois enough time to kick a game-winning field goal. Like, if you're not somebody who takes chances, then what are you doing? This is Notre Dame. We're talking about one of the most storied programs in the whole sport, and what I don't understand is just their lack of demeanor, their lack of confidence or something. And I'm not even remotely a fan of this Notre Dame team, but to lose to Northern Illinois in the fashion that you guys did, like, oh my God. I mean, if I was an alum, I think I would be disgruntled for like a week and a half, because this is just downright terrible. And Marcus Freeman really needs to look in the mirror, because this has happened to him too many times. They lose games that they should win, or they're about to turn the corner, and they lose a game they lose a game they shouldn't. It's happened every year of his tenure, and this is now continuing. I mean, it happened his first year against Marshall. It happened at one point last season as well, and it's happening now this early in the season. Absolutely, positively brutal. Brutal to say the least. And if I'm a Notre Dame fan, I am 100% with it. Final zinger of the day today. I think UFC 306 outsells the Canelo fight. And I would usually say that if it was any other UFC event, I would say that boxing wins out here. But I think the uniqueness of the Sphere and just the way that they're plugging it, like, you got to buy the event to see what's going to happen with this production, leads me to believe that it is going to be the most unique UFC production of all time. And when Dana White says that it's the most pre-bought UFC event in the history of the promotion, something tells me that everyone is intrigued by what is going to happen that night, as well as what's going to happen with the worlds and the acts and the 90-second short films. I just think it blows any boxing event out of the water that night, and probably will blow most major sporting events out of the water that night. Um, uh, to go along with it. So again, I'm excited for this. I'll be watching both, but I think UFC 306 does just enough to outsell Canelo Berlanga and be one of the most bought UFC pay-per-views of all time. All right, we're going to move into the end of the show. Look over into Zan's look ahead here. We're going to look at week 2 in the NFL. So just a few news and notes before we get into this. Week 1, I did really well. 12-4 straight up, 10-6 against the spread. In 3 out of my 4 survivor pools, I'm still alive. I had the Texans winning. I had the Bears winning, and I also had Seattle beating Denver. So, very very good week for me in terms of survivor. The only one I was knocked out of was the one where I had the Bengals to beat the Patriots, which everybody lost on that. But moving into week 2, though, should be an exciting slate of action. So let's take a look here at the NFL week 2 slate. Just wanted to run through all the games just to tell you guys when they are and whatnot, like I'm going to do every single week. So we start the week Thursday, September 12th, Thursday Night Football, 8:15 Eastern, Bills and the Dolphins. Then we move into the 1 o'clock window on Sunday. We have a bunch of games. Seattle against the Patriots, 2-1-0 teams there. Chargers against the already struggling Panthers. The Colts against the Packers team that's going to be without Jordan Love, at least for the next little bit. The Jets and the Titans, 2 teams that just were god-awful right out of the gate. The Raiders and the Ravens, which, by the way, a little teaser, the Ravens are one of my survivor picks this week, as well as Kansas City to beat Cincinnati. That's also a little teaser. That's going to be another survivor pick of mine this week as well. Moving on, San Francisco and Minnesota, the Giants and the Commanders, the Cowboys and the Saints, the Browns and the Jaguars, Tampa Bay and Detroit, the Rams and the Cardinals, the Steelers and the Broncos, which arguably might be the best 425 game of the weekend. Sunday Night Football, Bears, Texans, and then, of course, Monday Night Football, Falcons, Eagles. So that's going to be exciting. And then just moving right into the college football top 25 slate. Just a couple games to take a look at in week 2 as well. I already went over one of them. That was Wisconsin versus Alabama. Let's take a look here. So we've got a bunch of college football games in week 3 on Saturday. Let's take a look at the overall schedule. So we've got a top 25 matchup between Arizona and Kansas State. Should be a good game. Obviously, Boston College, which is heavily underrated now, taking on number 6 Missouri, one of the SEC favorites. That should be interesting. Miami, number 10 Miami against Ball State. Notre Dame against Purdue, like I mentioned. Ole Miss, number 5 in the nation, traveling to Wake Forest. Utah going to Utah State. That's going to be interesting. Texas versus UTSA. Number 1 Georgia going down to Kentucky. That'll be interesting. And then, of course, Tennessee versus Kent State. Not a lot of huge heavyweight matchups in the top 25 this week, but that is going to be the slate. It's still early in the college football season, though, so a lot of exciting stuff to watch there on the horizon. That's going to wrap it up for this week's show. This has been another edition of Bando's Breakdowns. Again, my name is Zain Bando. Thank you again for taking some time out of your Wednesday afternoon to listen to me or to watch me. Is very much appreciated. Just a few quick reminders before we get out of here, though. Be sure to listen to Bando's Breakdowns wherever you get your podcast. That's YouTube, Premium, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Acast, and so much more. If you're listening on the audio-only side, come back over to the video home, youtube.com/ETV Network. We're very much appreciated if you subscribed, hit the notification bell, and like the video. That way you don't miss any of my other content or any other shows across the network. Would be very much appreciated. One final shout-out, Bando's Breakdowns and every other show across the network is presented by Playback. So if you could support our relationship with them again by becoming a member of our community and starting to watch more football with us, as well as Fight Study coming up later this week, that would be greatly appreciated. For myself, Zain Bando, and for everyone behind the scenes, this has been another edition of Bando's Breakdowns. We will be back with episode 22, where we will be, celebrating me just being a few days away from turning 25. So we'll talk all about that. We're going to talk all about the week in sports, the week in the NFL, the week in college football, Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois, and recap all the madness that was Canelo and UFC 306 clashing on the same night. Until then, have a great rest of your week and enjoy all of the major sports that are coming up this weekend. And I will see you guys soon. Have a great week.